The message of Buddha enlightenment laid the foundation of both Buddhistic religion as well philosophy, which in course of time spread far and wide, Ceylon, Burma, Siam in the south, and to the Tibet, China, Japan, and Korea in the north. Like all great teachers of ancient time, Buddha taught by conversation, and his teachings were also handed down for a long time through oral instructions imparted by his disciples to successive generations. Now, Buddhism is a religion to about 300 million people around the world, and the word comes from Buddhi, the icon. It has its own origin about 2500 years ago, when Siddhartha Gautama, known as the Buddha, was himself awakened or enlightened at the age of 35 years. The well-known Shakyamuni was born in Lumbini in the Nepalese region of Tarai, near the Indian border. He is one of the most important Asian thinkers and spiritual masters of all time, and he contributed to many areas of philosophy, including epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics. The Buddhist teaching formed the foundation of Buddhist philosophy, initially developed in South Asia, then later in the rest of Asia. Buddhism and Buddhist philosophy now have a global following. There are many different types of Buddhism because the emphasis changes from country to country due to the customs and cultures, creeds, etc. What does not vary is the essence of the teaching, that is the Dharma or truth. Early Buddhist ethics encompasses in the entire spiritual path, that is bodily, verbal, and mental actions. Too many Buddhism goes beyond the religion and is more of a philosophy or the way of life. It's a philosophy because philosophy means love of wisdom, and the Buddhist path can be summed up as follows. Firstly, to lead a moral life. Secondly, to be mindful and aware of the thoughts and actions. And thirdly, to develop the wisdom and understanding. Buddhists sometimes pay respects to the image of the Buddha, but there is no system of worship of Buddha idols. Not to speak for the figures or statue of the Buddha was indeed rested gently in its lap, and the compassionate smiles reminds us to strive to develop peace and love within ourselves. Went to the statue and is inspiration of gratitude for the teaching. This is not the worship. The factor of the Eightfold Noble Path, dealing with the wisdom and concentrations, and that is the right view, right intentions, right efforts, right concentrations, and right mindfulness relate to different type of the mental actions. The term right, that is the shama, is the context that doesn't mean the opposite of wrong, but rather perfect and imperfect, or complete or incomplete. That's denotes the best or the most effective actions to attain liberations. This, however, does not imply that the Buddha advocates the most perfect form of the ethical conducts for all his disciples. Early Buddhist ethics is gradualist. The word is related to the gradualism and is the selections and the variations that happens more gradually, in the sense that there are diverse ways of the practicing the path with several degrees of commitments. Not all disciples are expected to practice Buddhist ethics and with the same intensity. The monks, the nuns take more precepts are supposed to devote the more time to spiritual practices than householders. However, a complete monastic code, Pratimokkha, the list of the vows taken at higher ordination, like those found in later Binary literature, does not appear in the Pali Nikas. The most comprehensive formulations of early Buddhist ethics, probably common to monastic disciples and lay people, is the list of the 10 dark or unwholesome actions and their opposite. The 10 bright or wholesome actions: 3 bodily actions, abstaining from killing, stealing, sexual misconducts. These are the 3. 4 verbal actions, that is, abstaining from false, derisive, harsh, and unless speech. These are the 4 verbal actions. And 3 mental actions: abstaining from covetousness, ill wills, and dogmatic views. The Buddhists' main concerns was to enlighten sufferings, to find a cure for the pain of the human existence. In these respects, he has been compared to a physician, and his teachings has been compared to the medical and psychological prescriptions. Like a physician, he observed the symptoms, the diseases that humankind was suffering from. Next, gave a diagnosis, the cause and of the disease. Then he gave the prognosis, and it could be cured. Finally, he gave the prescription, the method by which the condition could be cured. His first teaching, the 4 Noble Truths, follows this pattern. Firstly, what is the first noble truth? The first noble truth is that the life is suffering. Life includes the pain, getting old and disease, and ultimately death, the final destiny. And psychological, we also endure psychological sufferings like the loneliness, frustrations, fear, embarrassment, disappointment, and anger. This is an irrefutable fact that can't be denied, and it is realistic rather than the pessimistic, because pessimism is expecting things to be bad. Instead, Buddhism explains on how suffering can be avoided and how we can be truly happy. Secondly, what is the second noble truth? The second noble truth is that the suffering is caused by craving and aversions, and we will suffer if we will expect other people to conform to our expectations, if we want others to like us, if we do not get something we want, etc. In other words, getting what we want does not guarantee happiness. Rather than constantly struggling to get what we want, try to modify our wanting. Wanting deprives us of the containment and of happiness. Containment and happiness, a lifetime of wanting and craving, and especially the craving to continue to exist, creates a powerful energy which causes to the individual to be born. So craving leads to physical sufferings because it causes us to be reborn. Now, what is the third noble truth? The third noble truth is that the suffering can be overcome and happiness can be attained, that true happiness and containment are possible if we give up on less craving and learn to live in each day at the time, not dwelling in the past or imagined future. Then we can become happy and free. We then have more time and energy to help others. This is known as Nirvana. Now, what is the fourth noble truth? The fourth truth is that the Noble Eightfold Path is the path which led to the end of suffering. Now, what is the Eightfold Path? The Eightfold Path consists of the 8 practices: right view, right resolve, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right to faith, right mindfulness, and right samadhi, meditative absorptions or union. In the early Buddhism, these practices started with insight, that is the right view, culminating in dhyana or samadhi as the core stereological practices. In later Buddhism, insight, prajna, became the central stereological instrument leading to the different concepts of the structure of the path. Now, what are the 5 precepts? The moral code with the Buddhism is the precepts, and of which the main 5 are not to take the life of anything living, not to take anything not freely given, to abstain from sexual misconducts and sensual overindulgences, to refrain from untrue speeches, and to avoid intoxications, that is, losing mindfulness. Now, what is karma under Buddha philosophy? Karma is the law that every cause has an effect, that our actions and the results. This simple law explains a number of things. Inequality in the world, why some are born handicapped and some gifted, why some live only a shorter life. Karma underlines the importance of all individuals and being responsible for their past and present actions. How can we test the karmic effects of our actions? The answer is summed up by looking at the intention behind the action, effects of the action on oneself, and the effect on the others. Now, what is wisdom in terms of Buddhist philosophy? Buddhism teaches that the wisdom should be developed with the compassion. At one extreme, you could be a good-hearted fool, and to other extreme, you could retain the knowledge without any emotion. Buddhism uses the middle path to develop both. The highest wisdom is seeing, that is reality. All phenomena are incomplete, impermanent, and don't constitute a fixed entity. True wisdom is not simply believing what we are told, but instead experiencing and understanding the truth and reality. Wisdom requires an open, objective, and unbigoted mind. Buddhist path requires courage, patience, flexibility, and intelligence. Now, what is compassion under Buddha philosophy? Compassion includes the qualities of sharing, readiness to give comfort, sympathy, concerns, caring. In Buddhism, we can really understand others when we can really understand ourselves through wisdom. Many other metaphysical questions were put to the Buddha during his life. He did not answer them all. Abstract and speculative metaphysical pondering and discouraged such questions as hindrances on the path. Such questions as what is meaning life, what preceded existence, etc., were often met by silence, or what may have seemed to like mysterious or security. Asked what happens at the arhat and enlightened one upon his death, the Buddha was said to have replied, what happens to the footprints of the birds in the air never means extinctions. And he lived, and he likened the death of an rent to the extinctions of the flame when the fuel, that is the karma, runs out. He evidently felt that many such questions were rising out of a false attachment to itself, and that they discarded one for the main business of enlightenment sufferings. Now, what is the path of liberation? Buddha intended his philosophy to be the practical one aimed at the happiness of all creatures. While he outlined his metaphysics, he did not expect anyone to accept this on faith, but rather to verify the insights and for themselves. His emphasis was always on the same clearly understanding. To achieve this, however, requires a disciplined life and a clear commitments and to liberation. The Buddha laid out a clear path to the goal and also observations on how to live life wisely. The core of this teaching is contained in the Noble Eightfold Path, as I told earlier, and which covers the three essential areas of the Buddha practices already been explained. Now, ethical contacts and mental disciplines and all this, and wisdom, the goals are to cultivate and both wisdom and compassion, and then these qualities together will enable one ultimately to attain the enlightenment and thereafter the nirvana. The path is laid out in the 8 steps, as I told earlier, but one may practice all of the steps simultaneously. Since they were together, they will work together. Now, the first 2 steps and their factors constitute the wisdom, right understanding and right views, and grasping the true reality as the seen in the Buddhist teaching. And it is not merely an intellectual understanding, and although rather it is a direct insight and penetration into the nature of the thing. Right thought or right intentions is that frame of the mind which is selfless, detached and free from malice, that generosity of spirit and which extends the loving benevolence unto all beings. Now, the Buddhist teaching and on the ethics and living of the good life and also extends it to the realm of the social and political. He was ahead of his time in many ways, and considering all the people as equal, and rejected the casteism and openly encouraged the woman to become the student and the teacher. He taught the governments and had a responsibility to lead by example, to teach the people ethics and to eliminate poverty by providing the opportunities and for the people to becoming the prosperous. He was clearly opposed to all the forms of the wars that taught that the violence can never create security, and in keeping with these teachings, and Buddhism is rare among the world religions in that is the followers never tends to spread their beliefs and through the use of force. It's unique among the victorious leaders, and the Buddhist Emperor Ashoka in the 3rd century BCE renounced violence and war and put the Buddhist ethical virtues at the center of his government. Now, regarding the Buddhist path as a philosophy, one may consider its epistemology. Certain claims of the knowledge have been made, but how can they be known to be the true? As I stated earlier, the Buddha himself never asked anyone to accept unproven claims of faith, and in fact discouraged them from doing so. He maintains that his teachings and could be verified by the direct insight and reasonings by anyone willing to consider them and to follow the natural path of self-discipline, starting from a basic assumptions such as the impermanence and dependent originations. He derived a complex and a consistent system of the philosophy which has stood for centuries. That the teachers have validated his claim that others could reach the same insights, and they have expanded upon his basic teachings with impressive institutive depth and intellectual rigor. Since science is knowledge which can be made into a system which depends upon seeing and testing facts and stating general and natural laws, the core of the Buddhism fit into this definition, and because the Four Noble Truths, as stated earlier, can be tested and proven by anyone. In fact, Buddha himself asked his followers to test his teachings rather than accept on good faith. That's why Buddhist philosophy as well as this is a philosophy as well as a science. This much for the day. Thank you very much to spare your time with my video watching. I hope in a very simple manner I have explained the core truth of Buddhist philosophy.